Hello and welcome. I'm Cait Sarazin, the Senior Content Manager at WWCode, and today we have Camille Eddy from Idaho. Camille, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. So, Camille, you're a Senior Project Engineer at Sector Software. You also are a visibility and platform strategist working for yourself. You're also a speaker, so you're a really busy lady.
Yeah.
And you help mission-driven startups build inclusive engineering platforms that scale. Can you kind of explain what this looks like in practice?
Yeah, a lot of times I think, especially for mission-driven people, and think women startups, think Black-led startups, all of those types of mission-driven areas, they will develop for their community first, which I really love. But oftentimes they're developing different types of projects that are interconnected with them. And so they'll want to take either their email marketing or their social media and put those together in a platform. Some people are actually building like novel platforms themselves. So being able to say from an engineer standpoint, this is the technology stack that you want to use. This is how you get engagement up. This is how you start thinking more like a platform and less like an individual. That's usually where I'm coming in to help people. And they hire me when they're ready to bring those different pieces together into one.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
And what about that work excites you, and where is the passion for you in that?
Yeah, so like my mom says, I love systems. And part of that work is really bringing together a system that someone is doing really well and adding it to a new, more influential system. And for me, my passion is that there should be more women and there should be more Black women online talking about what they're passionate about, making their voices heard. And for me, platforms are the way to do it. You can definitely test your message, understand who you're talking to, right, with one single social media account, like Twitter, for example. But where you really gain power is when you create a platform that's on your own terms, not on other people's terms, not dependent on someone saying, yes, I'll write you a check. So with the current technology that we have, we can accomplish that. And my goal is just to get more women voices out there in a credible and also just powerful way. Yeah.
Definitely. And how did you get into this line of work in particular?
Yeah. It was a journey for sure. I sometimes I tell people like I'm on my third career, and I know I'm young to say that, but I got really interested in tech when I was still in high school, and maybe even right before high school, started building websites. And then went to college for mechanical engineering because I was really interested in robotics and space. And right around then, I started kind of understanding a little bit more about how small businesses work and what it means to like lead a small team. I led a couple, student-led teams. And so by the time I was ready to graduate, I realized I wanted to pivot from mechanical engineering to product. And so I made that pivot with my current company at Sector Software. I like to say that was the final pivot that I needed to make fully into that role. But it along the way, still meeting a lot of small business owners who didn't know what the next step was. They might hire me to build a website for them or to build out their social media. But I really understood that there's a whole system that you can be a part of, and that it's a little bit more of a partnership at that point versus like a one-off. I send someone an invoice and I don't hear from them again. So that was something that I tested out right before I graduated, and I really launched myself into it after I graduated. So I was like happy to have that kind of ability to pivot from something that I was passionate about to something else that I'm also passionate about. Yep.
That's very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah.
being in tech for a minute, what has your experience been like as a woman in tech?
Yes. So there's so much need for leadership, I think, in our space, for people to understand what the role um, of is for diversity. You hear about diversity fatigue and some of those other like just really icky terms when it talks about describing where we are as a field and as an industry. So, I've definitely seen opportunities for me to lead and to be that new voice. A lot of times, not only am I the first woman on a team, but I might be the first Black woman on the team, or it might be that we're creating a new team, and yes, there's representation, because it's a new team, there's a tendency to default to old patterns, the way people have done things in other companies in the past that might not be the future we want to create. So for my role, I'm going to use a little bit of a term here, but I like try to burn the bridges. Like there's a lot of old bad habits that we really shouldn't be employing anymore. It's time to burn those down. And I try to burn them down behind me as I move forward. And I definitely had my share of just like really coming to my own and my awareness and my confidence as a woman in tech, being able to say, this is the way I want to do things. And no one around us has done it like this before, but I have the clout, I have the accolades that like show what I can do and how I can bring a vision to reality. So yeah, that's been part of my job, I feel, is as a woman in tech, burn those bridges, make it so that we can't do those old habits anymore. Yeah.
Definitely. That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I really like that idea of burning the bridges. You don't normally think about it that way, but yeah. It makes a lot of sense in the context you're describing. Thank you for that. Have you, so a lot of being in tech, being new to tech, being a woman in tech, there's a lot of fear that comes up sometimes, either fear of the unknown or fear of just imposter syndrome. Is that something that you've experienced? If so, do you have any tips for navigating that?
Yeah, so definitely felt imposter syndrome. And something that's I think is practical about imposter syndrome is you can be feeling the effects of it for so long that you think it's normal. And so for me, it was about being kind of shaken out of the normalcy of, I feel like I'm inadequate, I feel like I'm going to be found out, and I'm changing my behavior to make sure those things don't happen to me. And so having mentors, and I have a specific method to mentorship. Most likely I will never go to somebody and say, can you be my mentor? But I do have a history with 6 or 7 really awesome and amazing mentors in my life that I never had to ask that to. And so the way I do mentorship to shake me out of beliefs that are wrong is I have a posse method. And this idea is that I can learn from anybody. I can have a million mentors in my lifetime because there are people that are younger than me, older than me, in a different industry than me, my peers as well, the people who are more similar to me. They can all give me a piece of the information that I need, and I can pick the best of all of those advice. And so my posse method is what's been really helpful to ground me and to shake me out of those wrong beliefs. And that's how I would go about really understanding a new environment, an environment where no one before you has like said, yeah, I've been there, I planted my flag there, I can help you out. If that's the case, then I suggest that you go out and you find those people who have that information and just listen to them. And I know that's different from the traditional way that we've been taught about mentorship, but it's definitely helped me being out here in rural Idaho, for example. When I was in college and I went to college in Idaho, it was hard for me to have a clear understanding of Silicon Valley because nobody in my peer group or in my mentor group at the time had been in Silicon Valley. But I used Twitter and the internet to build a connection. And by the time I got my first internship in Silicon Valley, it was like I had a homecoming event and I didn't even know it. They're like, oh, we knew you were coming and we're so happy you're here. And I had a wealth of connections and friendships to rely on and to really learn the lay of the land. And that's probably the first place where I really understood that I was used to the feelings of imposter syndrome and I could shake that and I could do something different. And so that's how I would suggest, going about mentorship and being able to confidently say, nope, I do belong here and this is why.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Such a different perspective on something that is very familiar to most people. I like that.
Thank you. Awesome.
That's hard. So with that, talking about building a community online, a lot of people are in a situation now where they're being forced to do that, and it's a very different landscape than meeting people in person. So can you share any tips that have you been successful in building a community online, whether that's Twitter or other platforms?
Yes, and I think this is amazing. I think this is something that we should really lean into because I felt like there was a whole section of our tech community or students who were still falling behind the online networking game because they would use the obvious excuses like, oh, that's impersonal, or it's not reflective of who I want to be as a professional. But now those rules are being broken, right? They have to be, otherwise you won't survive. So I'm really hopeful that this new adoption of online tools will continue and be prevalent because it's useful and resourceful. And so for me, I suggest connecting with people you don't know. That's one of the first ways I think that the internet is really useful, is that ability to say, I don't know you, but we do have a similar professional interest. Would you like to connect? That should be easy to do. There should be no problem there. So connecting with people who you don't know, and then also making offers, or at least distinguishing between asks and offers. So when you're asking somebody for something, do it based on an understanding of where they are and where they're going, and that by giving you that information, it fits within their value system, right? If they have a community mindset, then yes, they're going to give. But sometimes, we get caught in chasing people online. Like, we just keep trying to send them a connection request, or we try to meet them here, meet them there. It's okay with the abundance of the internet to move on to the next person and come back to that other person. So really try not to get too siloed on an individual. Think about it from a community perspective of being more connected to people in the community gives me the clout to go ahead and meet more people and to gain more followers or to get more connection requests. So think about it more from a broad perspective than just the individual. And then third, asking people for information, making sure that relationship is actually beneficial, not just leaving them, on red in your inbox because, there's so many people to talk to. So actually picking up, sometimes it's okay to send a connection request without a message with it. But when you do have that connection to that person, you understand what they're doing and how it aligns with your interests, just doing that next step, which is ask a compelling question, not just how are you? I wanted to connect with you and I hope you feel the same, but more like, oh, how are you? I saw that you did this. I did ABC. Can we talk about it some more? I think that that's helpful of moving, the abundance of the internet, not focusing on just one person, but definitely taking those opportunities to start a conversation with somebody so they're just not, like wondering why you connected with them. I think that that's always helpful for growing an organic relationship that can eventually turn into that more traditional face-to-face relationship later down the road. One more tip, this is kind of like a bonus. Network before you need to network. It's always better to network from a position of leverage. You have the job, you're good, you're going great, and then you use those relationships later to help you down the road. I think that's something that we kind of forget about LinkedIn and networking. When we're okay, it's better to be networking at that point than later.
Definitely. Really great advice. Very, very smart. I love that. Is there a woman in tech, either in history or modern time, that has inspired your career?
Yes, for sure. So I mentioned earlier that I got into mechanical engineering because I was interested in space science and robotics. And so first off, to give a little background, I was homeschooled for all of my primary education, so all the way up through high school. And my mom knew I had an interest in engineering. We just didn't know for what, right? We just knew it was engineering. So she made me, and I was shy, so she made me go to the local university because they had a high school planning party. Now, we had already talked about engineering. We had already talked about me wanting to be like an astronaut and being interested in space science. I walk in, my very first time walked into a university classroom, and in front of me was a former astronaut, and her name was Barbara Morgan. And she taught in Idaho, and she was selected to be a teacher in space with NASA. And if you know the Challenger accident, she was actually the backup to one of the people on that accident. So she went to space, she came back and decided to go back into academics and into teaching. And so I got to meet her, and she became my mentor for 4 years, which was amazing. So she took me through the last couple of years of high school and the first couple of years of college. And her mentorship really taught me about leadership. Like, a lot of the leadership lessons or the way I execute leadership now is based on her example, because she was there. We got the opportunity to do some NASA projects together, and she taught me how to write a NASA report like a NASA engineer, like a NASA astronaut. And I thought that was so cool how she would go line item by line item. I spent some late nights with her. I got to travel with her to Houston, and I got to see her in her element, but then also she taught me a lot about how to be in my element as a student leader. And, I'm not doing space science right now, but if I were, I would say that it's very similar to what I do today in creating systems, documentation, like all of that work that I do now in a product engineering sense. I think I can trace back to some of those really early lessons. So I'm really thankful for that. And also, I'm also thankful that, I'm in Idaho, right? And there's a lot of easy ways to tokenize individuals, especially if they're the only Black person on the team. And she was one of the few people that I never felt that with. And that was really important to me back then, talking about imposter syndrome, like we did earlier. That time was where I learned like that I feel uncomfortable. I feel like I need to pretend. And she was the one person I felt that I didn't need to do that with. So yeah, definitely here for mentors, and also here for people who match your identity. That was really important at that time, that she was another woman going through she had gone through similar, times of learning and trying to figure out where her place was in the system. So that was really helpful, I think, especially in those years. Yeah.
Definitely. Wow, what a great inspiration.
Yes.
Thank you so much for all of the knowledge you shared with us and your story. Really inspiring. Thank you for being here. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate it.